I'll go ahead and take roll.
Yes.
Director Gallagher.
Here.
Julie Peterson.
Here.
Matt Cobranche.
Here.
Jessica Dixon. Here. And Chair Pimentel.
Any amendment modification? Public comment next. This is the time set aside for members of the public to address the committee on any items not on the agenda. Are there anybody here?
No one online.
Any public comments today?
I don't have a public comment, only private one.
Committee members? Move on to consent. We have our minutes from our December meeting.
Read into the record, sorry, December 16th. We had a Monday instead of a Tuesday.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve consent? Those to approve.
Thank you. I have Gallagher and Dixon approving that, and I will take roll for that item. Director Gallagher.
Yes.
Julie Peterson. Yes. Matt Cobranche.
Yes.
Jessica Dixon.
Yes.
And Chair Pimentel.
Item number 2, financials for November.
Great. And, while Rosie's bringing it up, the presentation is pretty much just going to be a year-end. I didn't break out November and December, but in your package, you got both the November and December financial statements. You know, I'm very pleased to say, we finished the year about almost $5.2 million better than budget. And, while we had, a loss in December and a small loss, $825,000 loss for the full year, there were a couple of major things in December that really kept us from hitting positive net income for the year. First off was the cyber attack, and while we've caught up a lot of the charges and we were able to book revenue accruals and things to try to make December look as normal as possible. There might be a few things that slip in, but we felt pretty good about the revenue that was booked into December as an accrual. We did have to put an accrual towards the expenses of the cyber attack, many of which will be reimbursed by the insurance company, but, you know, we have a deductible. So the first $250,000 is on, you know, is money that we have to put out. So we booked the accrual for that. And then we went through a recoupment of $850,000 from a cost report issue from, I forget which year, I think it was a 2022 cost report, where we had previously booked the cost report payment that had come to us, so then when they recouped it, we had to book that they took back $850,000. So when you say $850,000 and $250,000, that's a $1.1 million hit in December, and so the fact that we finished the year at just $825,000, we would have made a couple $100,000 for the year. So I'm very proud of the team, especially since we had budgeted a $6 million loss for the year. I'm very proud of where we were able to accomplish in 2024. So that's kind of the highlights of the first couple slides. I will just, you know, quickly point out that for first slide, month-to-date income, so the $217,000 was the month-to-date loss. You know, generally, even though we had extra expenses for, especially labor, some of the overtime and extra hours that went into the recovery efforts, and we will continue to see some of that into January. You know, labor wasn't, you know, totally off the charts. It was just a little bit higher. You know, same with supplies. We're still gathering some of the supply costs that we would not have incurred if we didn't have the cyber attack. I had to go through reams of paper and toner cartridges and labels, things like that. The purchase services is where that accrual has been booked towards the cyber attack recovery. And so, you know, overall, figure we did a pretty strong month of December. It wasn't the highest volume month, as you'll see in a couple of slides from here. And then the next one being the year-to-date, and this shows the $825,000 loss against the $6 million income. Overall, what you can see is that we finished the year about $3.2 million favorable on net operating revenue, and expenses were about $1.6 million higher than we had budgeted. And as we've seen all year long, supplies has probably been our largest challenge of the year. I guess one other thing to point out, we've shown a variance all year long in the plant line of utilities, repairs, maintenance, taxes, and insurance, partially because we had budgeted the year with insurance showing below the line, and it should have been budgeted above the line, so we had talked about that previously. That was the property insurance that we were paying through the MPT lease. And then, we did, since the purchase, we are booking as though the hospital pays the rent to the district. So we are still recording a rental expense, and that has moved above the line. Okay. So this slide just kind of showing how net revenue compares to total expense, since at the end of the day, that's kind of what tells the story. Always wanting the green line to be above the blue bar, and while it was over the summer months and October, November and December, for the various reasons we're talking about, a little bit of it being volume and then some of it being these other unexpected expenses. Next slide. So admissions, 274 admissions for the month. You can see that's down about 12 admissions from where we were this time last year, and so pretty equal with what November was. Exactly equal with what November was. So on an admission per day, that was just under 9 admissions per day. I'll round up to 9, since I don't think we admit a 0.8 of a person.
Not usually.
From the observations, 274 admissions, 65 observations. Certainly fewer observations than what we were doing this time last year. Some of this, I find this a harder thing to say, that, the cyber attack reduced the number of admissions or observations. We certainly watched all the volume during that peak time when we didn't have the electronic health record system, but I know that the team worked as hard as they could to keep as much business here as was feasible from a patient safety and patient care. So for deliveries, we had 68 deliveries for the month, pretty on par with last year, 9 in December, and really probably one of our stronger months for the year, just given that we had months where deliveries felt kind of light, and the 68 getting close to 70 is usually where I feel like we're about where we normally should be. Next slide. So average daily census was 31 for the month, very different from last December where we were at 35.6. Length of stay, 3.5. That's, within our normal range. Slide. So our acuity was a little higher this month. It's dipped, and this is certainly an area of focus for us in the HIM and clinical documentation world, that we're kind of watching the case mix. We're looking for opportunities to make sure that we're querying the right questions to the physicians if we think that there just may be some opportunity to document something better. And we tend to have pretty decent response rates back from the physicians, agreement rates with the questions being asked. And so we're looking a little bit more internally at, are we querying all the opportunities that actually exist? And one of the things that has prompted us to that query is we go through an annual audit of coding, and we also went through an audit of the clinical documentation opportunities, and the auditor picked up things that we could have asked about and didn't. So that's kind of a focus point for us in 25. Let's make sure that all the great work and great care that we're giving is being appropriately documented. Next slide. Okay, outpatient visits. This is an area that was a little bit lighter, and, certainly at the beginning of the month where we were still in downtime mode, that may have impacted somewhere. We had 83 ER visits per day and about 97 non-ER visits per day. So you can see in the slide here, both, kind of November and December. Some of it, I think, comes with the holidays, normally, because if you look back at where we were in December of 23, it's really not that different from December of 24. So I think as the holidays come up and you have, the Thursday, Friday after Thanksgiving, and then you get the time between Christmas and New Year's, that tends to drive down some of the at least scheduled business. Okay, so from a surgical perspective, did 43 inpatient surgeries. Really, that's pretty much in line with what the last half of this year's been. We did have some highs in, September, October-ish, but many months that were in the low 40s, so that's pretty normal. The outpatient surgeries at 105, a little bit lighter than the previous months, but again, I think the holidays really contributes to that. We did 17 robot-assisted cases, a little lighter than our heaviest month, but pretty much in line with where we typically have been with the robots. On the outpatient side, it kind of continues to be the same story in terms of general surgery, ortho, OB being the kind of top three, urology, and of course. So lower total volume, but basically very similar spread between the different specialties. Okay, next slide, please. On the payer mix for admissions, 14.6% for commercial admissions, so slightly higher than November, down a little bit from our summer and late fall months, which is usually when our highest commercial volume is here. 14.6 is certainly better than December of 23 when we were at 11.9. So it has kind of felt, and this is, to me, it's still a feeling until I have a few more trend points, but it has kind of felt like we're getting a little stronger on the inpatient commercial side. And we've certainly budgeted that way when we think about Kaiser, potentially getting some Kaiser volume from the Salinas MOB and their expansion in that area. From the other, certainly the Alliance is our strongest, always has been. They were at 43.8%, so up a little bit from the last, actually, as I look at it, about the last 6 months. The last time they were up over 43 was in May of 24. So strong Alliance volume, a little bit lower on the Medicare side of the house. We were at 25% for the month of December. Next slide. So on the outpatient side, also a good month commercially in the outpatient side, 24% commercial compared to 22% last December. And the last time we hit up over 24% was July. 47% on the Alliance, so crept back up from the last couple months that had been down. And, really everything else, it's usually within a percent of month-over-month change. So, I see it again as kind of good news that we're building up some commercial volume. And that is the end of my slides, so I'm open for questions.
terms of the surgeries, the sections,
Yeah.
That I would have to confirm with Vanessa. I think that they're counted, but I cannot.
yes.
Okay,
Goodness,
thank you.
Thanks for all this.
Big picture. Hi, my name is Marcus, and I forget to talk very often. I forget how to. When going through the stats on utilization trends, are we mature enough now, or do we have, like, those stats compared to what we expected, or what our benchmarks are, or anything at that point? Or
We do have most of the stats like that are on the last page here, we have, a budgeted stat. So we could compare, what did we think that admissions or discharges or emergency visits, any of that, we could compare that to budget.
that would be helpful.
Okay, so, yeah, for a while I thought I was doing that, and I think as I get in and start
Yeah.
tweaking with slides, I drop one off, and so I'll put some stats to budget here.
And then, again, from a big picture standpoint, when we're modeling visits, patient over time, I've got December being a little month. Do we factor that in, like, in budget for 2025, are you factoring in? I assume at some level you're factoring.
Yes.
Seasonality.
Yeah, when we try to work the spread, we do spread it based on kind of looking at historically how much volume comes in each month. The ideal state, and I think we're gonna be close to it, but we might make a couple tweaks given what we went through at the end of this year, but is to budget every department's seasonality, kind of department specific, knowing that, maybe you're not gonna have as many radiology visits, people take time off or something, and that might be different from ED visits. It was certainly our intention going into this budget, because we are for the very first time loading detailed department level budgets in MedHost. But as we are preparing the budget load and the complexity of that, we're making sure if that's not feasible, that kind of plan B is that we will do it at least on a kind of per adjusted patient day seasonality, because that will kind of be a good proxy for that. So definitely the budget is being spread to forecast seasonality based on kind of what we've historically seen.
Kaiser, how can we monitor Kaiser's roll rates or patients showing up for anything versus patients being directly cared by Kaiser? Or I'm interested in that. I guess in the end, I'm trying to understand. I guess not value Kaiser, kind of my words, but like.
Well, we can certainly, we already, can track how many Kaiser patients did we see this month, did they come into the ED, were they admissions? So, at the highest level, we can say, our admissions or our ED visits growing, our deliveries growing. If you're trying to get to the point of, how many are we getting from Salinas opening? And we don't want to just assume that, if we got 5 and now we get 7, that the 2 are new from Salinas. We'd probably have to figure out some way to go after the person's, like, zip code where they came from. And we don't currently do that kind of analysis, but could get that out of the encounter data.
Starting with the end in mind, where is that? If Kaiser decides to leave us, what is our
hospital, we'd know that was coming for a very long time.
I
Yeah,
got that,
so we,
yeah.
but, you know, the best kind of indicator, I would say, that we can look for right now is who else are they contracted with in the region? Because they need a hospital to send their patients to, otherwise they're gonna transfer them back over the hill to another Kaiser. You know, they're not currently contracted with Dominican or Sutter, you know, and so, you know, we kind of have that working in our favor right now, is that we are their hospital here. And, you know, not to mention that we use their hospitalist group and they practice here, and they're trying to grow their volumes in here. So until they have somewhere else to send them, they want to be able to point to us. I think taking that a little deeper to the other part of your question, you know, what's at risk? You know, we haven't done this analysis, but if, you know, we could look and say, okay, we know how much net revenue we get out of Kaiser in a year. And if we took expenses and said, you know, on some sort of like an expense per unit of service, and said, gee, if we lost all that Kaiser volume, what percentage of those expenses do we think would go away? Because they don't all go away. When you lose volume, you lose efficiency, you know. But you can certainly do it from a net revenue perspective. You know, I don't know the number off the top of my head. I remember going through that at my days at Sutter Delta, where Kaiser did pop up 2 miles down the road, and we knew they were coming, and when they came, it was quick and painful. So, but, you know, I don't think any of us feel that we're there now or any time in the
Yeah, by February 20th, like, half is 4,000.
Yeah,
My brain's hurt.
projecting for the future, thinking about the.
You've got a lot of things going on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Questions are, have we seen machine, or in the short run, get close to normal?
No, it's a great question. I'm encouraged by the first 2 days of this week that it could get closer. Up through last week, I was still seeing about 50% of what I normally see in cash, which has made it very painful. And one of the challenges that I think we're facing is, you know, obviously we went for 3 weeks without billing, so you build up this big backlog of discharge not final bills that's got to go through, you know, charge entry, then coding, then bill edits, then claim submission, wait out a few weeks, get paid. So, you know, we built up a pretty big, you know, our discharge not final bill was up near 70 million, and a normal is 15 to 20 million. So, you know, talking 4, 5 to 6 days versus we were up at 20 days, you know, unbilled. We're starting to bring that down, but it's not going down as fast as I'd like, and I'm trying to get some information, because I think what the real challenge is it's going down, but the new business is coming in. So it's like one goes down, one goes up. I mean, I see us dropping a lot of claims, and even, you know, kind of a larger than normal push, but we also have volume coming in, and, you know, we were very busy earlier in January as well. So, you know, I think that run out is gonna take longer than I hoped for, but I am, you know, I can't really tell from this week. Maybe after tomorrow being Wednesday, I'll have a little better sense. If I was been running at about 50%, I'm hoping this week to get more like 60 to 70% of normal. But I think I'm still a little ways out from being, okay, this is at least a normal week, even if I have, you know, more DNFB than I want.
I asked about any expectations or estimates, insurance. Cyber insurance.
Yeah. We're actually still gathering a lot of that data. You know, I kind of hesitate to say what it is yet, because we haven't seen a lot of the invoices from what are gonna be the bigger dollars of this payout. One other update, it doesn't have to do with the cyber attack or cyber insurance, but one that will be interesting to this group is the fact that we finally have some guidance on the distressed hospital loan. Remember, we were going after forgiveness. They ended up creating a program that is kind of multi-step. So the first round, they're not going straight to forgiveness. They're saying you can go through a loan modification application, and if you're approved, we will defer payments for another 12 months, because we've been on an 18-month, the first 18-month grace period. Our first payment is due May 1st, so if we can get this approved, we won't have a payment due May 1st. We get another 12 months. My understanding at this point is get into that program first, and then if you are approved for that, then whenever they open up the next section, you can then apply for step 2, which I'm not sure if step 2 is automatically going to go to, okay, you're right, your loan's forgiven, or maybe another deferral piece. But anyway, we are working fast and furious this week on the loan modification application. First, I heard it was due February 3rd. That's what I've seen. They actually haven't put out the final application yet. They put out a draft, so we're working on what the draft tells us is going to be required. I heard today that the final one, so then we had heard that we had you want to do it 90 days before your first payment, which means we would turn it in by this Friday. And that's what our goal is we're going to turn it in on Friday. Well, I heard that the final application isn't coming out until Thursday. So at this point, we're assuming that the final is the draft, and if it isn't, that they're going to give some sort of, leeway, especially if it's drastically different. Vanessa's going to reach out and ask them, but we're kind of we're thinking reasonable people would think one is going to be the other, and that we're going to turn in a loan modification application on Friday.
Admittedly, sort of crazy thought. Was there money left over in the pot that was hospital loan? Anyway, that say for sure.
No, there was no money left over, and the money we got, was gone in about 5 minutes. If I could get that much more now, it wouldn't even be enough for what I really need.
Unfortunately, this has to go through the request for the loan modification to indicate backdate to the data. They're still working on draft.
Yeah.
Yeah. But appreciate that. That's top of mind problem. Other questions? Questions, Director?
I do have a question on my mind. Do we need to do anything special to kick off the audit? Any kind of special approval, or do we just status quo, just go with the same auditors?
That's a great question. Unless the board, the finance committee here chooses to use a different audit firm, typically at this point in time, we reach out to Gerald and ask him for an engagement letter. I sign the engagement letter, we kick off the audit. We try to get it kicked off as close to February 1st as possible, because some of our loan covenants say that we need it by about April 30th, and there's a lot of work to get done.
I thought there was general agreement that if an audit likely hold the thing.
At the county, we can save our firms for a while, and one thing we do that is, get back to every 5 years. I think every 5 years, we have to get the partner of the audit. I don't know if Gerald has it in the person. If we like the firm, it might be the one we have.
I've only ever met Gerald and Nathan. And I think Gerald's the partner and Nathan's the worker. And then Gerald, weighs in on things, especially, that's their own checks and balances piece of it. So I don't know if they're much bigger than that.
But I agree.
Is the alternative
that also doing, and the same audit firm can still respond, but you just sort of are looking at it.
I mean, the best practice out there is rotate firms.
Yeah.
At the county, we found that not be so beneficial. This is folks who audit counties are such a small universe. And when you have a big one, and that around by rotating different partners who have different perspectives, so they bring a different level of independence. That's what we've done in the county. That's worked well for us in other counties. The city manager is a little bit more flexible, so you'll tend to rotate firms every 7 years.
Remember something in the board packet, which is the engagement letter.
Yeah.
Over the mayor and the steps that.
It kind of typically happens as we're getting ready to sign the engagement. Because I haven't even requested the engagement letter yet. It's a good reminder that I probably should request the engagement letter and, try to, I can tell you, you could read last year's engagement letter. It will say the same thing other than maybe the fee. Yeah. But, it's a pretty standard engagement letter, so,
And am I right,